Welcome to Western Wisconsin Journal. This show is a segment on the arts. I'm BOBBI POMINVILLE, retired music teacher and your art reporter. And today I have an interview with a very, very excellent subject. Charles Giffin is my guest today. He is a composer, an arranger, a singer, and the editor of the early music manuscripts, and also president of the Choral Public Domain Library. I want to find out about those things, and I think you do too. And he has expanded a lifelong advocation for music into a full-scale, avid pursuit following his retirement in 2001. Well, that's 1 year after I retired, Charles. And as I said, he also, besides the resume I just gave you, he also sings, directs choirs, plays oboe, and he moved here from Charlottesville, Virginia to Hudson in 2004, where he was singing for 12 seasons and recording 3 compact discs with the early music ensemble Zephyrus.
Zephyrus, yeah.
I have heard of that, and I'm very impressed with that. I want to learn more about it. And his choral compositions have been performed in Europe, Australia, Canada, and the United States. I want to hear more about that. And as I said, he'll tell us about the Choral Public Domain Library, and he is the president of that group. And of course, he enjoys living here in Hudson with his lovely wife. And he has 8 children, 10 grandchildren, and 2 miniature long-haired dachshunds. I'm sure they're well-versed in music. I know my dog likes to sing with me every once in a while. So honestly, there's so much to talk about here, but maybe we could start with what led you into so many different fields of music.
Well, I would guess that perhaps the main thing was that my mother made sure our house was filled with music. She was a cellist and a pianist.
Nice.
And I tried to be a cellist, but not very successfully, and a pianist, not very successfully, but I did sing a lot. Guess it was probably in something like 3rd or 4th grade. I was in a church choir. I'd been taking piano lessons. I could read music well. I was a soprano for less than 1 rehearsal because they were making the altos in the junior choir do something difficult, and I was singing along with them and said, "Oh, you can sing that?" I said, "Yeah, it's easy." And they said, "Okay, you're an alto." So I got to be a soprano for like a half an hour at a rehearsal.
That's a good story.
Yeah. And I was pretty much of a dilettante in music for a long time. I dabbled in, as I said, playing piano. When I got to high school and finally discovered the oboe, that was something different. My sister played a little bit of oboe. She was an accomplished pianist and singer, and she and I did a lot of singing together. And I played oboe in high school, but since an oboist couldn't march in the band, I had to learn a lot of other instruments. So flute, piccolo, bass clarinet, tenor sax, trombone, baritone, tuba, glockenspiel, cymbals, bass drum, this, that, and everything.
That's amazing.
And I had started doing some composing in high school. It was all bad. Nothing survives, thank God.
But you started there.
But I started there. In college, I mean, I was singing, of course, I was always singing a lot in high school. And then in college, I sang some. And at the University of Wisconsin, I sang with the Memorial Lutheran Church Choir under Russell Paxton, who was director of choirs at the University of Wisconsin, and did a little bit of gig playing. The best gig playing I got was to play 5th flute and piccolo in a performance of the Stravinsky Symphony of Psalms with the Wisconsin Music Festival that Robert Shaw was the conductor of.
Oh.
The 2 pieces on the program were the Stravinsky Symphony of Psalms and the German Requiem. So I played in the Symphony of Psalms and I sang in the Requiem.
That's wonderful.
And then in graduate school, off to graduate school, I studied mathematics. I did not study music for a degree at any time. I always studied it on the side because I figured I couldn't make a living as a musician, and I loved mathematics and was reasonably good at it. So
And those two fields do relate.
They do relate. In graduate school, I did a lot of singing with church choir, an Episcopal church choir there, and continued some more composing. I got married immediately out of graduate school and stayed at the same place, and was singing both in an Episcopal church and in a Methodist church, and that was really excellent because the choir director was Robert Simpson, who was one of the directors of choral music at Westminster Choir College. He had the freshman choir there, and it was a really wonderful experience. Then moving to Virginia, to Charlottesville, for my first real job, pretty much my only real job. I fell in with the Oratorio Society there that had been newly founded, and sang with numerous musical groups, church choirs, did a lot of things, did a lot of oboe and English horn playing, began composing when I could. It was hard to do. I typically wound up composing maybe the 15 to 20 years before I left Charlottesville for church choirs, mostly service music because they didn't have any. This was a so-called traditional choir for a Catholic church that hadn't really had much of a program for traditional music. So I composed a lot of introits and antiphons and that sort of thing. I got out of that and for a while didn't do much of anything except attend concerts. And I was at an organ recital and asked a friend of mine with whom I'd sung a lot in the early days in Charlottesville. He was a wonderful tenor. He asked me how things were going. I says, well, you know, he asked me what I was doing as far as singing. I said, you know, I'm not doing anything right now, and I'm sort of really feeling an emptiness in my life about it. He said, I've got somebody I want you to meet. He walked me over to Paul Walker, who was the founding director of Zephyrus, which is the group I mentioned that I sang 12 seasons with. A week later, I was singing with them, in rehearsal with them, and another week singing a Thanksgiving service at the chapel of Patricia Kluge. I don't know if you know who Patricia Kluge is. She was the wife of John Kluge, who was a Metro Media owner. She's been in the news recently. You know, a very rich person, very ornate, Baroque Rococo style chapel, and she would have services there from time to time. In particular, we sang for a Thanksgiving service, and then I sang concerts with them for 12 years, and that's when I really fell into early music and started editing early music.
Yes. Now, when you say early music, you're talking
Renaissance, Baroque, medieval music.
Even pre-Renaissance?
Yeah, medieval music. Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Well, late medieval. I mean, medievals. It gets difficult to find the manuscripts and to unearth them and research them. And most of the groundwork's been done, but I still do some research on that too.
How interesting. Oh, and I think everyone who's studied music, you know, has to go into that era. And I think a lot of people don't really understand or know much about it. But every once in a while you'll find a real treasure that comes from that period.
You unearth a gem and then suddenly you're hooked. And that's pretty much the way it was with me.
That's wonderful.
Indeed.
And so your love of early music inspired you to edit these manuscripts.
Right. I mean, previously, the earliest I went was to Bach, maybe Buxtehude and Heinrich Schütz. I did sing a fair amount of Heinrich Schütz, which was fairly early Baroque, but nothing before that. Actually, when I was in high school and through college, my favorite. I was a romanticist. Romantic music was mine. Bruckner, Wagner, Brahms, Schumann, and all of the German romantics, and opera and symphonies, and Bach occasionally, Handel and Bach occasionally, and when they were still popular. And it wasn't until I moved to Charlottesville early on that I decided that I actually bumped into a Heinrich Schütz piece and liked it. And so for about 3 or 4 years, at the church I was at, I would have us do some piece by Heinrich Schütz with instruments, period instruments.
Excellent learning.
And that was the beginning.
Those
but
are
it
great
didn't
pieces.
it didn't really gel until I joined Zephyrs, which was specifically geared to early music. It was an early music ensemble.
Right. So I can imagine how the Romantic era really spoke to you.
Well,
And then you even got into contemporary music, I bet.
well, I always liked I did like contemporary music. There was a lot of good contemporary choral music. Some contemporary instrumental music was fascinating, and you had to study it anyway, and there were aspects of it that appealed to me.
Yes.
Even Zephyrs, this early music group that I sang with, occasionally sings modern music that is, in some sense, a reflection in the mirror, as it were, of Renaissance music, the type of stuff that is. There's a lot of contemporary choral music, a cappella choral music that looks back centuries away, and we sang some of that stuff, and it was really nice. And I suppose I composed in that style too.
Yes. I think this has affected your composing.
Yep.
And your definite love of that period. It's a great learning period for those of us that study music. Now, is that your favorite period of music?
Early music? Yeah, I would say it is, mostly because of the way I've grown in it. But I do love modern music, and I still smile and feel very good about romantic music when I hear it, classics and romantic. When I hear it, I don't play that much or sing that much of it, except when I'm in a group that does it.
I know at one time I didn't care for contemporary music very much, but I had my tickets to the Minnesota Orchestra, and every time you go, you hear at least one contemporary piece. And I kind of got so I could tolerate it, and I could learn a little bit from it.
That's right.
But of course, the Renaissance and the Baroque, that is my love of music.
It's good in small doses.
Yes.
Although
I agree.
there are some really big pieces, contemporary modern music that are difficult to come to grips with. For instance, the Penderecki St. Luke Passion, which just lasts over an hour. Very modern music, 12-tone methods and aspects is so visceral and dramatic that you can't be, at least I couldn't help but be drawn to it. And actually it influenced my own composing style when I do try to compose in a modern idiom.
Mm-hmm. So you've done that in the 12-tone?
Yeah, I have. There's a motet in 2 parts that I haven't finished the first part of, for 12 voices, 3 4-part choirs, O Magnum Mysterium, and it uses 12-tone techniques, and it uses whole tone techniques, and is very, very modern. It, in a way that tries to capture the mystery of the text and of the event, of course, of which the text deals with.
Great theme for that.
Yeah.
I would think that would lend itself well.
And occasionally, I mean, some of the stuff I've done recently has also got various modern techniques. One of my newer pieces, actually the most recent piece that I've finished and composed actually within a 24-hour span a week and a half ago, is I Will Not Leave You Comfortless setting, which is appropriate for Pentecost, and it's composed in not 12-tone, but in what's known as the octatonic scale, which is a scale. It can be sung, but it's a scale that, for its harmonies, creates a different style of harmony than the Western harmony we're used to. Mm-hmm. It's occasionally featured in short bits in other composers' works. It's most full works composed entirely in that mode tend to be shorter. Indeed, the piece that I wrote, I think only lasts, see, I've got the timing here, about 2.5 minutes. But it's a very effective thing, and it's sort of interesting because although it's a modern harmonic tonal and tonal, not atonal idiom, the compositional style looks back to chant and Renaissance polyphony.
Oh.
So it's
Very good.
And the fact that I could compose it in only 24 hours was amazing to me.
Wow. So are the rules totally different?
Yeah. Well,
That's kind of music?
Well, yes.
You don't follow the rules you follow normally.
No, well, you can't because you don't have the normal chord progressions.
That's right.
Because certain notes are not allowed. You're only out of the 12 notes of the chromatic scale. There's only 8 that are used, and if you were to play them as a scale, it would be a scale of alternating whole step, half step, whole step, half step, whole step, half step, whole step, half step.
I see. Wow. That takes a lot of.
So while you can have C major and C minor in it, and E flat major and E minor, you can't have a G major chord because D isn't in the scale. You can't have a G major or D minor scale. So you can't. There are no 5-5-1 chord resolutions, dominant to tonic resolutions. So you have to. Chord resolution is a different subject there, and in fact, it's means that you have to be somewhat inventive. And to a certain extent, you allow dissonance in the music as well. You allow. Because you have both major and minor chords on 4 different roots: C, E flat, F sharp, and A. It's not unusual in that music to have a chord which is both C, both major and minor. So you have both the E flat and the E natural in various parts of the chord, and it creates a very sort of mystical, ethereal effect.
Yes.
And it's really evident in the piece that I wrote.
Are you going to play a little bit of that for us? Or
I could. I did.
Are we out of order here?
It's actually not one I put down, but yeah, I can play it.
Well,
sure, I can play it. Sure, because it's short.
Well, give us just a little intro to it now. What are we actually hearing here?
Well, it's a synthesized. I've got to find it first of all. I didn't think we would get into modern music so fast, so let me just.
And what did you call the scale? Octave?
Octatonic. O-C-T-A tonic. Octatonic. You can, one can Google it and find it pretty easily. Let's see, I just have to get to the right file here. Sorry to have to look for it.
That's okay. I'm just thinking of something super modern that I would have heard that might sound somewhat like it, but I don't think I can prepare my ears quite for this because I'm not used to it.
This will be tonal. It will just be unusually tonal in an unusual way for the most part. There's some dissonances, and the text is, "I will not leave you comfortless. I will come to you yet again, and your hearts will sing and rejoice," with alleluias stuck in between the 3 stanzas. So the way it's put together is that the first sentence is in the top 2 voices with a 4-part alleluias response, and then the second statement, it's the top 2 voices are replaced by the bottom 2 voices, and the music is turned exactly upside down. It's inversion. The whole thing is inverted, and then for the 3rd verse, the top 2 voices and the bottom 2 voices switch roles, but they're still and they're put together in what might be called a canon or a fugue. So you have a double 2-part canon, and then it ends with sort of very quiet alleluias. I'll play the whole thing then.
Thank you.
Let's see how it goes here. You can follow along.
believe how much I like the sounds you got out of that.
It's an interesting mode,
And when
right?
you think about the word comfortless,
Yeah.
the way you did the, sort of the melodic interest was undulating around different notes. And to me, it was like you were searching for something.
Exactly.
And then when it got to the Alleluia, I got the sense of a little bit of resolution.
Yeah. Well, that's what's actually happening in the Alleluias, those initial Alleluias, is it's following a chord progression that just goes up, backs up a little bit and goes up, continues to go up in the octatonic mode, and so where you get actually alternating major and minor chords, but in sort of unusual positions from traditional harmony, but they create a wonderful effect.
Oh,
and you can actually hear
wonderful.
little snatches of this sometimes at the end of a piece. I think Vaughan Williams at one point used just like 4 measures of an octatonic progression, harmonic progression, near the end of one of his positions and things. And other composers do this. There's other composers where, you get 4, 5, 6, 7 measures of something that's octatonic. You say, oh, that sounds weird, sort of neat, Well, such things tend not to be able to be sustained for more than 2 or 3 minutes. Really long pieces. The longest pieces that I've sung were actually a modern Magnificat Nunc Dimittis at a choral evensong, which was written entirely, they were both written entirely octatonic style. The style was different from mine, a little more bombastic in some sense, but also featuring a wonderful soprano solo above, interesting chords in the rest of the, in both the organ and the choir. But with something very similar to what you heard in the Alleluias as far as progressions. There's one spot where they go up the scale and then they leap up to a major chord, and it's the thing that makes you sort of get chills when you sing it.
Yes, I could hear some of that.
Yeah.
And very ethereal.
Yeah.
Oh, that's beautiful. Well, should we talk about the choral public domain a little bit now?
Yeah.
And what exactly is that?
Well, the Choral Public Domain Library was founded, I want to say now it's nearly 12 years ago. 12 years ago, a little over 12 years ago, by a person who actually is a physicist and musician as well, a choir director in California, is named Rafael Ornes, and he maintained that by himself for a number of years. It grew and grew and slowly grew. I discovered the group in 2004 and started contributing in 2005. At a time when his old website, which was sort of falling apart because of the provider and the service and that sort of stuff, and he went to a new format, a so-called wiki format, same format that Wikipedia has, and became heavily involved in the development of that website, and as well as a place where I was encouraged to do my musical editing, which I really jumped into editing in a big way at that time.
Yes.
In 2008, Raf he's younger than I and has family and kids and a church choir and job and that sort of stuff. He felt he had to step back, and so a group of us sort of took over the organization in a transition period. And then 2 years later, in 2010, I wound up being the president of the organization when we reorganized as a nonprofit. So it exists as a nonprofit organization. Choral Public Domain Library, cpdl.org. And that what it offers is free downloadable choral music, choral and vocal music that's in the public domain, or that contemporary composers have released for free. So for instance, I put all of my choral works on Choral Public Domain Library. You just have to go to my composer page there, and you can find all of my works that I've so far put up there. Download them.
And there's no fee.
No fee. All you have to do is have a printer and paper and pay for that. You can copy them, distribute them, perform them, or record them without license. I mean, some people put on you can only perform them for free if it's for nonprofit purpose, and if you want it for other purpose, you have to contact the composer.
Oh, I see.
And so
If
some
you're
people
going to charge for a concert or
so some
something
people
like that.
some people reserve the right to restrict performance to nonprofit performance, but you can still download the stuff for study at any rate. And
Nice.
so it differs from another organization with a bigger purpose, but also a somewhat different, bigger but different purpose. The International Music Score Library Project, IMSLP, deals mostly in making copies of public domain, out of print public domain music, but they're scanned copies, and so you can get these old scores, but they're difficult to read sometimes. On the other hand, you can find the stuff that's out of print, and because
that's nice.
and so actually there's sort of become a little sub-cottage industry that takes some of the choral music that's out of print but available in facsimile form from IMSLP, and engraves it in new performing editions and puts it on the Choral Public Domain Library.
Oh,
I mean, I've done a couple of those things myself, and others do it as well.
great.
So if I'm wanting to prepare, say, a Handel piece for performance or something like that, I usually go to IMSLP or wherever I can and get a copy of the Christender edition of the complete Handel works, and then prepare scores from that if I have to. So I've done that occasionally.
Wow. This could save a lot of money for people that are strapped for funds
It
and
is. It
don't
saves a
have
lot-
the
it
money
saves a
for
lot of
the
money.
music. And
Well, for instance, the complete Handel Messiah is available, complete with orchestra parts and everything, free at Choral Public Domain Library.
that's amazing. I don't know how that can happen, actually.
Well, it's in the public domain. The music is in the public domain.
That's
And indeed,
very neat.
published editions can, well, there's copyright law. I'm not an expert, but basically copyright only extends for a certain length of time after a composer's death, a composer and librettist's death, and after that time, the music falls into the public domain, despite what publishers try to browbeat you into thinking.
Yeah, I don't think they want
so,
the word out there very much.
So,
So publishing, do you think it's kind of going
Well,
the way of,
well,
it'll never be, probably.
It's sort of funny because people say, well, print music is probably going to go out of business. I still live for print music.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, I've heard now that somebody say, well, actually, before long, you'll see people with a Kindle or a Nook or whatever it is, or a desk, laptop computer
Yes.
singing from these. And actually, there have been concerts that way. Their music comes off of a computer or off of some sort of readable form. So
Wow.
who knows?
Well, we got to move on to your
Yes.
composing, and what inspires you to compose is my question. But I know you brought some examples today,
Well,
and you share some things with me when I see you at rehearsals.
yeah, I occasionally do.
And I'm excited to hear about your music, so
Well,
tell us about some of it.
I think probably I became interested in composing because I used to write little melodies and that sort of stuff as a child. But in that long ago romantic era, when I sort of discovered romantic symphonic music, Bruckner actually mainly, and Beethoven,
Yes.
and Brahms, I would read books about these composers and their lives and what they did, and it sort of seemed fascinating. I thought, well, that would be sort of nice to do because I like to write music. And
Yes.
it wasn't until a lot later that I discovered that I really did want to compose, probably because I had to at one church gig that I had where they needed music for responses and that sort of stuff that just wasn't available, wasn't
right.
readily available. And that grew on me. Even though I'd been composing since high school, I didn't seriously compose until probably 25 or 30 years ago. So I was well into my adult stage. But then I was a mathematician and with a university job and raising children and that sort of thing. And so I wasn't doing a lot of it until I retired. And since I retired, I've really done a lot.
Great. So that's probably your main activity now.
Yeah, it's my main activity, mostly choral music, although I occasionally make excursions into instrumental music. I've written a little piano music, a little bit of instrumental chamber music, but almost all of it's choral music. And I do some arranging as well. I mean, I'll see something I like and make an arrangement of it.
And I know you had a piece sung by the festival chorus at the Phipps.
Yes, I did.
And
Let's
that's
see, I moved here in 2004, and I guess it was in probably 2005. The fall of 2005, I sang with the Phipps, and then the next year, Tom Dolly, the director, programmed my Creator of the Stars of Night, and it was a really fortuitous time because in addition to singing the two concerts that we traditionally sing, the festival chorus that year was also one of the choruses to sing at the Wisconsin Choral Directors Association convention in Madison, which we went to.
and we were featured.
And we were one of the featured choirs, and we sang that piece there, but also it got sang twice over in Woodbury because we sang it in one of the churches, King of Kings Lutheran Church, two services there, so it got sang five times. It got sung 5 times.
Good.
5 times, and it's probably my most popular piece, actually.
Good.
On my Choral Public Domain Library website, I've got a place where I log performances, known performances, and that probably the most performances have been sung there of that piece there. Although a couple of other pieces are beginning to be discovered too.
Good.
So it's nice, and fortunately it was recorded, so I have a recording of the concert of that piece out of the concert. Tom gave me a copy.
And are we going to play it on this show?
We could.
We'll leave a space for it.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
It lasts about 2 minutes, a little over 2 minutes.
All right.
And it'll be a local performing, very good performing choral group. Something nice.
Excellent.
I mentioned that I compose sometimes in modern idioms, and we just heard this piece with the octatonic scale, and I mentioned that my Omanium Mysterium employs 12-tone techniques, but even when I do 12-tone composition, there's something tonal about it, even though the music is officially atonal in some sense. So people bend the rules, and it's really, even Penderecki in his St. Luke Passion bends the rules when he's using 12-tone methods. But for the most part, most of my composing probably is what would be called neo-Renaissance style. So that in the sense that it's a modern composer trying to evoke the Renaissance era. So I said when I compose, it's as though you're looking at a mirror back into the past. Some of my music sounds pretty old-fashioned.
Good, because I think that's a very fine era to come from.
I didn't think about that. There's, I hadn't mentioned it before, and I didn't put it on the CDs here, but there's a Kyrie and an Agnus Dei, the Lord have mercy and the O Lamb of God, which is on the bookend pieces of the Mass or of the communion service, the Eucharist service in the Episcopal tradition. Anyway, I wrote 2 a cappella Kyrie, which is sort of A minor piece, and it's very much a Renaissance piece. In fact, a group sang it recently, and somebody asked, he said, "What was the era of the composer? I mean, when did he live? Like 100 or 200 years ago or something?"
Yes.
And no, actually, it's a modern piece. And then the counterpoint, at the other end of this is the Lamb of God, which goes from A minor to A major, and it's really sort of not contemporary, but a contemporary look at a Renaissance style, and it's accompanied, not a cappella, and it has an obbligato, a descant obbligato in it, which is very nice too, and it's a totally different thing. It's very popular at a certain church out in California.
So are these pieces part of a Mass?
Well, at one time,
at one
point they were considered to be part of a Mass. I have done a communion setting, a different Mass, which is intended more for liturgical use within the two pieces I wrote there. They can be, while they can be used within liturgy, they're a little longer than the settings you would usually think.
Okay.
So instead of a Kyrie, Lord have mercy, that lasts a minute and a half or something, you're in the Mass, you know, you get it over Lord have mercy, Christ have mercy, Lord have mercy, and even if it's repeated, in less than 30 seconds. And in the communion service that I wrote, it only takes about 30 seconds to do that, and the Lamb of God at the end only takes about a minute rather than 2.5 or 3 minutes.
Right. Oh,
So
very nice.
yeah.
And some of your other compositions that you want to talk about today, and we're going to play some excerpts
Right.
from the show.
Well, for some reason, I've been really busy since the turn of the year, this year. I started out composing a setting of the Nunc Dimittis, the Lord, now let thy servant depart in peace. Actually, it's the canticle that is sung at night prayer. It's one of the two canticles sung in evensong in the Anglican rite, but in the Old Compline or night prayer service, there's only one, and it's the second canticle that from choral evensong. I composed that partly because I came in contact with a person that's very much into Compline music in California. He's the former principal bass trombonist of the Los Angeles Philharmonic. He's a little younger than I am, but also retired and a musician, and we've become very good friends. And in response to that, somehow I've managed to, 3 of the pieces I've written have really been written because, I'm sure because of my having formed a sort of a musical relationship with Jeffrey Reynolds in California. That was followed almost immediately. Well, in fact, the Nunc Dimittis was finished on February 2nd, which is the Feast of the Presentation, which is when that canticle was probably originally sung by Simeon.
Oh, really?
Simeon's song. And then 2 weeks later, actually for Valentine's, I've managed to compose the antiphon that usually goes with that at the night prayer, and so that was for my wife, but also still for the as a piece appropriate for night prayer. And then a few weeks after that, very dear friends here in town, who are also singers, you know them well. Anyway, they had a loss, and I was prompted to compose in Manus Tuus, into thy hands, O Lord, I commend my spirit, which is also, forms what's called the short responsory at night prayer. And so the Steins have that piece dedicated to them.
That's very nice.
And so those 3 pieces were written in less than 6 weeks. And it sort of was while they're sort of traditional, they still have this way of looking back.
Yes.
In particular, the Nunc Dimittis has a very mysterious opening and ending. Has musical quotes from a piece I wrote 2 years previously called This Advent Moon, which is a very meaningful piece to me as well. And then most recently I wrote this, I will not leave you comfortless. And since the earthquake and tsunami and subsequent events in Japan, I've been sort of inspired to try to write something in response to that. And I'm working on a piece now, which is at least currently called haiku. It's in 3 sections, 5 measure section, 7 measure section, 5 measure section. It's a very short, fairly short piece. The first 5 measures take about 30 seconds. No, they take a little under a minute, I should say. And the middle section will probably take about a minute and a half or 2, and the final section another less than a minute. But they evoke the quake, the tsunami, and then the aftermath, which now we know includes the trouble with the nuclear reactors, but also the fact that there's so much that the Japanese people have had to endure.
Yes,
And
that's
the one part that's finished is the first part, the haiku of the haiku, the first 5 measures, and it's it does evoke these catastrophic quakes. In fact, that's sort of the thing at the top. I wrote a short haiku, and
Yes, read that to us.
catastrophic quakes, disastrous raging waters, ravaged souls endure. And so the catastrophic quakes is the first part. It's now set in stone and finished, and I'm almost finished with the middle section. And the final section, I know what I want to do, but I haven't really delved into it yet. But I have the haiku part I can play if you want.
Love to hear it.
Okay.
And you were sharing this with me at rehearsal one day.
Yes, you got to hear it.
And I was so impressed that you were already composing.
And the only thing I have to do is make sure that it loads the right instrument file. So this is a synthesized recording. It's got 17 instruments, 7 winds, 5 voices, and 5 strings. So again, there's sort of the 5-7-5 structure of the haiku. It features very prominently this first section, the bass trombone, as being sort of the thing that augurs the power of the earthquake. And interestingly enough, it's written in an octatonic style, also. But this you'll find much more modern, but also has tonal beginning. All hell breaks loose, and then a tonal end as the earthquake subsides. So here we go.
I like the use of that bass trombone.
Yeah. Well,
it almost sounds like a tremor.
Well, it does, and it's the lowest register of the bass trombone. And fortunately, my night prayer friend from California is a bass trombonist, and I know he can play those parts. So I had him in mind when I wrote the part.
Well, and obviously it's going to be dissonant, and you've got an earthquake going on, so you're not going to hear pleasantries.
No, I mean, but but you hear the tonality
you do hear that.
At the end.
Yes, and that last chord.
The last chord is a C major chord.
I noticed that.
And the first chord is C major, but that rising figure in the first measure is very typical octatonic writing style. And then the rest of it, I use all of the 8 notes that I've got to make as much dissonance and noise and thunder and, well, not thunder, but shaking and rattling that an earthquake would give.
Oh, yes.
Even with the falling sound of the voices and instruments there in the fourth measure.
It's very descriptive.
As things come tumbling down.
I really think it's descriptive of what you've taken the verse, the haiku, and then you've adapted the music to it. Now, is there anything else we should talk about? Because we're getting to the end of the interview.
I don't know that there is.
But we've covered a lot of your music.
We have. Yes, you have. That's fine. That's just fine.
And it's been delightful talking with you today.
Thank you.
It's been really expanded my knowledge.
Yeah. Well, I was fortunate to move to Hudson, which is, in the greater Twin Cities musical circle, which is really good for choral music especially. And I'm basically a singer and choral music composer, so I knew what I was getting into when I moved here.
Yeah, so you actually chose it for that reason?
No, I didn't choose it for that reason, but I was.
But that was a little benefit.
That was a very good side benefit. Yes.
Well, thank you so much for coming today.
My pleasure.
I've enjoyed this thoroughly.
So have I.
And I hope the audience enjoys it. And if you have any questions, give me a call. But I think what we tried to do today is explain a little bit about composition, the different things that are available. A lot of musicians don't even know about some of these things. And I think we've tried to educate you a little bit, and I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching today.